Hello everybody, absolutely great that you're joining a discussion I have with Rabia Nasser on the issue of solidarities in conflict and war zones, as well as on very general conditions the people in Syria and Lebanon are facing currently, and about a common research project we have called No War, Knowledge Production in Times of Flight and War, developing common grounds for research on Syria. Rabia is a researcher here at the University of Vienna, as well as co-founder of the Syrian Center for Policy Research, the SCPR, one of the members of our research project. And it's absolutely great for me to collaborate with him for nearly 3 years, I think now. Yeah, absolutely great. My name is Helmut Krieger. I'm a researcher and senior lecturer here at the Department of Development Studies at the University of Vienna, and the overall project coordinator of our common research project, No War. So in the following 25 to 30 minutes, we will discuss different main topics of our research, starting with the overall issue of the general conditions people are confronted with in Syria as well as in Lebanon, and we will move on then, I think, to our research agenda, how it is and how it can be conceptualized as a quite unique one beyond a mainstream approach of social science research in conflict and war zones. So great that you're joining, and great to have this opportunity to discuss with you together these different topics. May I ask you a very general first question about Syria as well as Lebanon, or if you prefer, about the whole region. How would you characterize the current situation, the current developments in Syria, Lebanon, or maybe Mashrikis in general?
Thank you, Helmut. Thank you very much. I think it was a great experience through these years to work with you and colleagues on different complicated topics. I think all of us in the Syrian Center for Policy Research and in the University of Vienna learned a lot from this experience. And because it's relevant to a very complicated region, and this is the context that we are looking for. We want to think from a perspective to understand why this region degraded during several decades. It's engaged in different conflicts, in different crises, that it's very difficult to explain just from one specific angle. So that's why I think it's very important to look in a comprehensive way to the region and to the different actors there. As you know, that we have the Israeli occupation of Palestine and different aggregations through the last 7 decades, which has created a huge militarization of the region in general and affect the whole region. And also we have the Gulf Wars, the first and the second one, the Iraq invasion of the American invasion of Iraq, which has a huge spillover across the region. So we have these kind of different factors for this region that affect the governance system, the economic situation, and the welfare. In addition to that, we have the social movement during the Arab Spring. So the people in this region decided to change, to have a substantial change, and unfortunately, most of these experience smashed by either a political oppression or by a conflict, proxy wars through regional and international interventions. One of these famous situations is the situation of Syria. As you can see, in the last 11 years of internal conflict, which is actually, it's engaging different political and social actors who are support the fueling of the conflict, institutionalize the conflict in this country. with different phases, with different aspects. And this affects countries like Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, and Iraq. Of course, the whole region affected by this kind of, brutal conflict, which caused a substantial loss of the economy, loss of the life of hundreds of thousands of Syrians, in addition to losing the settlement and stability. Most of the Syrians moved internally or just leave the country to live in a very poor conditions as you want. In this situation, we have different narratives that dominate the knowledge production and the political narratives, as we can see. Many of the political actors use the identity politics to say that it is a conflict around sectarianization or about ethnicity. Many of them use that because there is a demographic youth, because of the demographic change and transition, others use the environment to say it is because of the environment. In this project, I think we need to understand the different actors and different political, social, and economic factors that affect this region, which is in a continuous way suffer from the foundation of the conflict in terms of oppression, in terms of identity politics, and also in terms of conflict economies. The conflict economies build a substantial and continuous relation between the elite who are interested in the continuation of the conflict, and part of this project is to understand how reinvest in the society, how rebuild the relations that can counter this kind of dynamics.
Yeah, I would like to add one specific point you already mentioned. Starting in 2011, and for sure there had been a huge history of, on the one hand, especially in the Arab world, but also in other zones in the south, of anti-colonial movements, of national liberation, of a specific authoritarian transformation of the former anti-colonial liberation movements. 2011, the revolts in the Arab world. When we started our project in 2018, we were already confronted with the destructive consequences of counter-revolutionary strategies of, the Gulf states in the Arab world, of interventionism by different imperial powers in the Arab world, of a kind of demoralization, or I don't know if I should use this word, of the people who wanted to have a life in dignity. So it was an absolutely difficult moment when we decided to start this kind of research project.
Yeah, I think there is, different phases between 2010 and our current time. But what we can conclude from the behavior and strategies by different political actors, that Russian and American, the Gulf, Turkey and Iran, played, in addition to the internal oppression, a very important role in the continuation of the current situation, of the demoralization of people, dehuman everybody, every human being inside the country and beyond, which is normalize the situation of losing people, losing lives, and injured people, make a huge displacement for many of the communities, siege a lot of people, so it became something that have been accepted in the region, that with these huge losses. And that's what we called it, the institutionalization of violence and conflict, that it become a designed system, which is supported by different actors, unfortunately, which means that the society need to challenge all of those actors to rebuild the institutions that can help and support and transform the conflict. I think this is the challenge that we face. Even when we have less military operations, we have the same strategy and the same behavior. So it is not just about the time of the war. It is beyond the time of the war. If it is a system that increase inequalities and increase the marginalization of the majority of people.
Yeah, and when we started with this project in 2018, 2019 was really the first, were the first deep discussions on how to move on, what can be done as scientists, as academics, not just to analyze the overall situation people are confronted with in Syria and Lebanon, but also what kind of tools do we have to adequately understand what is really going on, and how, as you said already, how can such a situation be transformed to a more equal, a more just society. And that, I think, was one of the critical points we started to touch.
I mean, this is how we need to invest in a critical social science methodologies. We need to re-understand the science that can support society, because it was dominated by different international global actors who want to understand based on specific political paradigm or doctrine, or based on a mainstream schools, if I can say, or theories. What we try to challenge is to first challenge the framework, to understand the region and to understand the people by introducing an organic research from the region, and to understand the situation by a comprehensive framework first. Second, by being a partner to the people, to understand them by discussing, by a dialogue, by having an approach that engages them, not just to brief them or collect what we want as an information. The bias about the conflict is because of political reasons and economic reasons for sure, but also because of the accumulation of knowledge in the last 200 years. We are not challenging only political actors, we are challenging the heritage of understanding the war through specific perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you used an absolutely wonderful term, organic research, and to understand the people as partners, as the ones we are working together with, and at the same time to know more about their own ways of survival, as well as their ways of recreating a social life, recreating a life that can be also defined by different ways of solidarities. I mean, when I go back to one of these first situations we were confronted with, let's say the more than 1 million refugees from Syria and Lebanon under very miserable conditions. And at the same time, because of the very specific way we organized our research project, the very deep relations we have and had with Palestinian communities in Lebanon, and then starting to think about what are the different ways of solidarity still existing despite, sorry to use this word, despite the feelings of defeat, despite demoralizations, despite the destruction of the country, despite the destruction of memories, despite the destruction of different knowledges in that sense.
Yes, I think it is not just what is remaining, it's actually what is recreating a new solidarities in different ways, and something from the values and the sense of supporting the other to reach the social movement in Lebanon in 2019, and which is, I mean, a phenomenon in this regard. The whole political and intellectual narrative, for instance, about refugees has been countered by a comprehensive social movement that refused the narrative. This is for us a solidarity that potential solidarity that existed before, and we need to invest in it, understand it, and understand how the people value the solidarity, not just by seeing it as an incentive or a direct benefit. They value it as an environment for them. They don't want to live in a country with huge inequalities or with people who has been marginalized compared to the other segments of the society. And the social movement in Lebanon is an indicator that threatening us by the conflict in Syria is not working. We are believing in the change of these systems in the region. Of course, we can mention Algeria, Iraq, and Sudan, who continue to have this social movement after the threatening that you will become like Syria. This is one important side of understanding solidarities, that it is still working and the people are willing for this transformation. And the other side, that the investment of the different political actors in the pessimistic picture or losing the hope is not working. The people still want to have a change for the future and still have the hope. It's under huge constraint, but it is something exists in the power of the society, which is, under-researched, I will say, at the best. And I think this project is refocused on this part, which is how the society value the solidarity, how rebuild different type of solidarity, including economic solidarity, and how this could be conducted in the region.
Mm-hmm. And I think at the same time how communities are confronted with different kinds of destructive repercussions of conflict situations, as well as for sure the war in Syria as well. It is great that you mentioned that, okay, we had 2011, the revolt in the different parts of the Arab world, and people at the same time, when looking at today's landscape, people in Sudan, in Algeria, in Iraq, in Lebanon were not afraid, although it has been again and again said that, be careful, we will repeat the Syrian scenario. And I think for us it was also absolutely impressive to see as researchers on the one hand, and at the same time for sure also as in a specific sense subjects of an idea of a just and equal society, how to transform our own ideas, how to understand social movements in that sense, and how to connect these understandings, these ways of conducting activities with our own research activities. And I think that's a quite sensitive and a very, very difficult point to reach. We have a very mainstreaming approach within social science, also within the whole research on social movements, quite, from my point of view, a quite Eurocentric one. We don't have the tools to really be able to understand and create the conditions to transform such conditions.
I think this is the major challenge for the project. In addition that you are working in insecure environment, the main challenge that you want to develop a framework. You are challenging schools and literature that dominating the knowledge production, and you need more tools that it's effective, and you want to engage with people without making any harm or without introducing your bias to the scene as a researcher. So this kind of different level of challenges that we faced, I think it was a very good experience to start to put investment in the three pillars. So we want a theoretical development and to challenge a new framework. We need a new tools, and we need to experiment this with all the high standard ethics, that we are respecting the people, we are dealing with them as a partnership, and we are trying to bring something that solve this challenge. But what I can see from this kind of exchange with the society, that yes, people are under fear, and most of the challenge of reading the the situation, including solidarities in the society, that most of the research is not able to see behind the reflections of the people. So the people under the fear, they will not talk to you, for instance, or they will change the topic, or they will escape the critical topics. So if you don't build the trust between you and the community and engage with them to have an in-depth discussion in a space that they trust that this research is not going to be used for commercial or for political aspects, I think you will not reach the point that you want. You will have like the discussion that it's on the surface, which is not what the really people think about in a safe space.
Yeah. You're totally right. I mean, we know now the different challenges, or better to say, SCPR, as Syrian Center for Policy Research, does know this kind of challenge for more than 10 years, and it was absolutely great to create this common ground within our research project and to bring in other partners as well, academics as well as non-academics in that sense. Musawat as the one deeply embedded into the different Palestinian camps in Lebanon and very, very or more than familiar with people's lives, the community's engagement in different activities and so on and so forth. And then SCPR, CDS from Palestine with the very, very long tradition, understandings of what does it mean to do research under colonial occupation, under the very general condition of a colonial power, being confronted more or less permanently with the dominance of Israeli colonial occupation in Palestine. And that created, I think, one of the basic conditions to be able then to further develop a kind of transformative research strategy. But we are not finished yet, I would say.
I mean, yes, it's a region with a gloomy picture. So we can see worse scenarios for the future. It is the foundation of conflict and degradation that has been, I mean, capitalized during the last decades. So we don't I mean, make a fake assumptions that we are looking for a better future in the current situation. But at the same time, there is what we can see as a mask of the subordination. So it looks like the society is subordinated to the polarization or to the refuse of integrating with the others based on nationality, ethnicity, class, etc. But what we see through this safe space that we created during our research, that this integration is very lively within the society, within the long-term interest of the society. So I think this research is very important, not just to understand our society and our systems in this region. It's also important to give a pathway for the future. Yeah. The society needs to see that there is a different approach, there is an alternatives. And you know that the oppressive powers also want to kill any potential project for the future. I think this research can be one tiny, humble tool to invest in this regard.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, it was really great to see when we started the different discussions we had as all different partners about the main topics we have to choose when we started to discuss, okay, what one pillar should be solidarities of the marginalized, of different marginalized communities in Lebanon, the Syrian community, the refugees who had to flee from Syria, the Palestinian ones, the marginalized Lebanese ones, as one pillar. Solidarity is there as a way of understanding and being also deeply embedded into what can be a solidary relationship among different communities. And the second pillar was also absolutely great to work out a concept of solidarity economy that is in contrast to what you called at the beginning conflict economy. And that for sure, I mean, that was and is and still is an ongoing process SCPR is deeply engaged with to work out an alternative that, despite the different conditions people are confronted with.
I think this is very important part of looking for different aspects of the conflict, not just looking for one angle. If we don't change the dynamics of the economy that created all this kind of elite and vast majority of marginalized people, and make an imbalanced structure of power within the society based on the economic policies that it's led by the neoliberal policies and reforms that fail to transform these countries toward more welfare and toward a sustainable development. This is a substantial angle that need to be reconsidered. Yeah. And we can't do it by social security or by humanitarian assistance. This failed to even reduce or poverty or needs. We need to have change in the system, and part of the system is the economic relations and the economic structure. The solidarity economy could be one foundation of the peace that we are talking about in the future, through different social relations within the economic system and through putting the priority for cohesion, for sustainability, and for equality, rather than just, following rent-seeking activities which created what we have seen in the last decade.
Yeah. So in that sense, it's absolutely great to see that we were able to start working out an overall understanding, as well as different kinds of concepts of solidarity economy despite conflict and war, and from quite different academic perspectives as well. So this is something I think is really extraordinary. Most of the colleagues from SCPR are trained as economists. Most of here from the Department of Development Studies are trained as political scientists or sociologists, anthropologists, and that created a unique space for thinking and rethinking.
I think we shared this critical point of view. We shared the importance of a transformative and participatory approach, which is, I think, the main thing, and in addition to all the ethical standards. This is, I think, the baseline. Otherwise, our even different approach that we created in this project, and the intense debate that we have, and we still have, and we will have it in the future, it's very, healthy approach of develop this discussion, as you mentioned, between academic institutions, University of Vienna and University of Birzeit, an NGO which work directly with people like Musawat, and a research center like SCPR. It is really a space between taking these challenges from different angles, from bringing the knowledge toward a solution, which is not easy to do.
Yeah, you're totally right. At the same time, I feel a kind of very heavy responsibility to further work it out, to be confronted for sure in this academic field in Austria or in other regions in the world as well, with very clear neoliberal restructuring of the whole academic field, and to combine both, to have this responsibility for and together with the different communities is not an easy task.
That's why I think it's very important to first not to, expand or increase our expectations beyond our capacity. Mm-hmm. It's very important to link ourselves to other initiatives and universities and research centers, and there is a lot of them who who want to make this kind of shift and transformation. And the other thing is to expand our dialogue. As you know that we invest like 3 years before we have our major outputs. And we hope that we can use these outputs in a discussion, a dialogue on the actor level and on the society level. I think this is now, it's a substantial part of our work, that to transform this knowledge into initiatives, into a discussion with civil society actors, with other humanitarian actors, to translate this into something on the ground. I think this is, of course, on a small scale level, that's what we can do.
I think that is a quite wonderful last statement. The necessity to translate and the necessity to realize a kind of responsibility as researchers and academics that is both scientifically embedded as well as politically.
Sure.
Rabih, thank you really so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you all. I hope you could enjoy our conversation on different topics regarding the different conflicts and wars in the Arab world, and primarily in Syria, and the repercussions the conflict in Syria has. So thank you so much. All the best. Goodbye.